What's the pattern? Glory on the move. What's the purpose? God with us. Groove. Blueprint from the mountain and in the sun. Pose on the shoulders, kingdom on the run. Make me a sanctuary, let me dwell with you.
Exodus 37 and 38. It can feel like the driest chapters in the Old Testament. That is, until you notice what they're hiding in plain sight. Gold hammered into blossoms, wood shaped into something almost alive, light flickering like the first dawn. And behind every cubit, every carving, every lampstand and altar, there's a story being retold. They're taking the chaos of the wilderness and they're reshaping it into a sacred space. And it's the first steps towards restoring Eden in the heart of Israel. You see, God is drawing his people back into the world that he meant for them from the beginning. And once you catch on to that, these chapters stop being dull and they start being absolutely breathtaking and deep. So welcome back to Come Listen With Me. I'm Ricky Black, aka Elder Eleazar, and today is day 2 of week 18. And we're reading Exodus chapters 37 and 38 as we continue our ongoing 2026 Come Follow Me study of the Old Testament. And again, this whole week, its theme is Holiness to the Lord. Now, yesterday, we watched the offerings come in to help build the tabernacle. But today, we watch Bezalel actually build the tabernacle, and the story of Genesis is being rebuilt and retold to the Israelites through architecture, furniture, and drama. Now, before we read, let's of course always acknowledge our Father in heaven and thank him for patience he shows in building a way home for his children, piece by piece, cubit by cubit. And as we walk through the furniture in today's reading, let us hope that we can see the patterns and through the pattern so we can see him where he's present. And as always, we want to read with intention and not just passively read. So here's a few questions to sharpen our focus today. So keep in mind, as we're running through this, what details in these chapters strike you as more than functional, and where is the description making a theological point as well as a structural one? So again, pay attention to that. Like, everything that they're telling you was recorded and documented here for a reason. And I don't think it was just because somebody was really happy with their construction plans and wanted it preserved in perpetuity, right? There's a purpose and function to this, and we need to spend the time drawing that out. Also, if the tabernacle is Eden being rebuilt, then what does that say about what God is doing for Israel and for us? So just look for that as we go through this and see what it's telling us. Okay. With that in mind, let us go ahead and open our scriptures then and begin. So again, we're starting here in chapter 37. And we're going to begin with verses 1 through 5. And Bezalel made the ark of shittim wood. 2 cubits and a half was the length of it, and 1 cubit and a half the breadth of it, and 1 cubit and a half the height of it. And he overlaid it with pure gold within and without, and made a crown of gold to round about. And he cast for it 4 rings of gold, to be set by the 4 corners of it, even 2 rings upon one side of it, and 2 rings upon the other side of it. And he made staves of shittim wood, and overlaid them with gold. And he put the staves into the rings by the sides of the ark to bear the ark. Okay, so the whole narrative in this chapter, all these chapters, they've been moving very quickly, right? Well, that is until now, right? And suddenly they're starting to focus on these small details, and they're lingering on measurements and materials and craftsmanship. And that whole slowing and narrowing of focus, it's intentional and very structural. See, Scripture only slows down when something is sacred and is asking us to pay careful attention so we don't miss what's actually being told here. So acacia wood is durable but earthly. Gold is incorruptible, radiant, royal. And the ark, well, it's both. It's human material overlaid with divine glory. So it's a visual sermon about God dwelling with his people. We see holiness touching humanity without consuming it. So the gold isn't only on the outside, it also lines the inside too, and that's important. Because in the ancient world, gods were often honored with outward splendor, right? But Israel's God, he demands a different sort of integrity, right? Holiness inside as well as out. And it's just another example of like how God is different than the mythological figures created by men. I mean, even including how the Israelites try to constrain God as a golden calf. So the ark, it becomes a symbol of the kind of people that God is forming, right? Taking them in their earthly status, and then he's going to, overlay his glory upon them inside and outward. Right. And also, the ark, it's being built to be carried, right? So God's throne is portable. So unlike the gods of Egypt, who were tied to temples and to specific geography, Israel's God moves with his people. Like the staves, they never come out. They're actually a permanent reminder that God's presence isn't locked into a building, but he accompanies his people through the wilderness wherever they are. All right, let's go on to verses 6 through 9 now. And he made the mercy seat of pure gold. 2 cubits and a half was the length thereof, and 1 cubit and a half the breadth thereof. And he made 2 cherubims of gold. Beaten out of one piece made he them on the 2 ends of the mercy seat. 1 cherub on the end of this side, and another cherub on the end of the other side. Out of the mercy seat made he the cherubims on the 2 ends thereof. And the cherubim spread out their wings on high, and covered their wings over the mercy seat, with their faces one to another, even to the mercy seatward were the faces of the cherubims. So, cherubim, the same beings that are guarding the way to the tree of life in Eden after Adam was expelled. And here they are, beaten out of pure gold, framing the mercy seat. So the same creatures that kept Adam out are now the creatures who frame the place of meeting God. And that's really the first piece of evidence for the Eden pattern. It's almost the most loaded piece of furniture in the whole tabernacle, actually. So, all right, let's continue on. Let's do verses 10 through 16. And he made the table of shittim wood. 2 cubits was the length thereof, and the cubit breadth thereof, and 1 cubit and a half the height thereof. And he overlaid it with pure gold, and made thereunto a crown of gold round about. Also he made thereunto a border on an handbreadth round about, and made a crown of gold for the border thereof round about. And he cast it 4 rings of gold, and put the rings upon the 4 corners that were in the feet thereof. Over against the borders were the rings, the places for the staves to bear the table. And he made the staves of shittim wood, and overlaid them with gold to bear the table. And he made the vessels which were upon the table, his dishes, and his spoons, and his bowls, and his covers, to cover withal of pure gold. So this is the table of shewbread, right? So 12 loaves, refreshed weekly, sitting in the holy place before the face of the Lord. Now the Hebrew name for them is lechem hapanim, right? The bread of the presence. So bread before God's face. 12 loaves for the 12 tribes continually. Let's go on to verses 17 through 24. And he made the candlestick of pure gold. Of beaten work made he the candlesticks. His shaft and his branch, his bowls, his knops, and his flowers were of the same. And 6 branches going out of the sides thereof. 3 branches of the candlestick out of the one side thereof, and 3 branches of the candlestick out of the other side thereof. 3 bowls made after the fashion of almonds in one branch, a knop and a flower, and 3 bowls made like almonds in another branch, a knop and a flower. So throughout the 6 branches going out of the candlestick. And in the candlestick were 4 bowls made like almonds, his knops and his flowers, and a knop under 2 branches of the same, and a knop under 2 branches of the same, and a knop under 2 branches of the same, according to the 6 branches going out of it. Their knops and their branches were of the same. All of it was one beaten work of pure gold. And he made his 7 lamps, and its snuffers, and his snuff dishes of pure gold. Of a talent of pure gold made he it, and the vessels thereof. So this is the menorah, right? Listen to the language. Bowls shaped like almond blossoms, knops and flowers, a central shaft with branches going out on both sides. The whole thing beaten from a single talent of gold. So there's no seams or joints. And it's just like the process that God uses in shaping people. He takes them as they are, of the stuff that they are, and reshapes them into something holy, instead of like trying to add to or take away from them. He just uses what they bring. And also, this is a tree. It's a stylized golden flowering tree. The menorah is the tree of life, rendered in beaten gold, standing inside the holy place, with 7 lamps that burn continually. Now, in Eden, the tree of life was barred from Adam by the cherubim with a flaming sword. But in the tabernacle, the tree stands in a room flanked by cherubim, tended by priests, and lit night and day. Let's do 25 to 29. And he made the incense altar of shittim wood. The length of it was a cubit, and the breadth of it a cubit. It was 4 square, and 2 cubits was the height of it. The horns thereof were the same. And he overlaid it with pure gold, both the top of it and the sides thereon round about, and the horns of it. Also he made it a crown of gold round about. And he made 2 rings of gold for it under the crown thereof, by the 2 corners of it upon the 2 sides thereof, to be places of the staves to bear it withal. And he made the staves of shittim wood, and overlaid them with gold. And he made the holy anointing oil, the pure incense of sweet spices, according to the work of the apothecary. So the altar of incense stands directly in front of the veil. The smoke of it rises continually before the Holy of Holies. Now in Revelation 8, that same incense becomes a symbol of the prayers of the saints rising before God. So that pattern is just continuous and it carries forward. All right, so on to chapter 38. Let's go ahead and pick up verses 1 through 3 here. And he made the altar of burnt offerings of shittim wood. 5 cubits was the length thereof, and 5 cubits the breadth thereof. It was 4 square, and 3 cubits the height thereof. And he made the horns thereof on the 4 corners of it. The horns thereof were the same. And he overlaid it with brass. And he made all the vessels of the altar, the pots and the shovels and the basins and the flesh hooks and the fire pans. All the vessels thereof made he of brass. So the bronze altar stands in the outer court. And this is where the burnt offerings happens. This is where the laying on of hands and the substitutionary blood, they meet. And we'll come to that ceremony on Thursday. But before we move on, 2 details in the passage are doing a lot of work here. And it's more than they look like they're doing, right? First, the horns. Yeah, they talk about these a lot, right? It's like in verse 2, 4 horns at the 4 corners. But watch the phrase, right? The horns thereof were of the same. So they're carved from the same piece of wood as the altar itself. They're not attached afterwards. They're very deliberate in their construction choice about how it's all done as a single piece, right? So in the ancient Near East, horns, they symbolized strength, authority, and divine power. And on the Israelite altar, they pick up specific covenantal meaning as well. And we'll read it over in Leviticus 4 later, but that's on Thursday, but the priest will dip his finger in the blood of the sin offering and place it on these very horns, right? So the horns are where atonement is applied. And later in 1 Kings 1 and 2, when Adonijah and Joab fear for their lives, they flee to the altar and they grab hold of the horns. The horns of the altar were a sanctuary, really kind of in miniature. So to grasp them was to claim mercy. Which means when the text takes the trouble to say that the horns were of the same piece, carved from the same wood of the altar itself, it really is making a theological claim for us to pay attention to. So the mercy is not something that's just bolted on, right? You can't remove the horns without destroying the altar. It's all part of the same principle. All right, let's continue on 4 through 7. And he made for the altar a brazen grate of network under the compass thereof beneath unto the midst of it. And he cast 4 rings of the 4 ends of the grate of brass to be places for the staves. And he made the staves of shittim wood and overlaid them with brass. And he put the staves into the rings on the sides of the altar to bear it withal. He made the altar hollow with boards. Second detail, that last phrase of verse 7. He made the altar hollow with boards. So most readers, you're likely to just skim over that. But it tells you that the altar was not a solid mass of wood and bronze. It was a wooden frame that's plated with bronze on every side. With the inside, it's actually open, right? And there's actually a practical reason for it. See, the altar, it had to be carried, and a solid altar would have been absolutely impossible to move. But there are also like theological reasons as well. You see, The rabbinic tradition, it picked up on this. The altar is not the source of its own power. It is a hollow vessel. Now, what happens on it derives entirely from what God meets there, right? On the altar that turned out to be solid bronze, dense and heavy, would have suggested permanence and self-sufficiency. The hollow altar says something different. This is a place of meeting, not a thing to be revered in and of itself. It is hollow. And one more thing about the bronze itself. The inside the holy place, everything is gold. But in the courtyard, everything is bronze. So the whole gradient, it's done on purpose. Bronze, it can take fire repeatedly without melting the way that gold would. And the metal was chosen for what would happen on it, right? Continual burning day and night, year after year. So the altar is built for the hard work of substitution. Also begins our first step into understanding like degrees of glory as we get closer to God. Okay. Real quick, verse 8. And he made the laver of brass, and the foot of it of brass, and the looking glasses of the women assembling, which assembled at the door of the tabernacle of the congregation. All right, so I want to stop here after this one verse. The laver, the bronze basin where the priests will wash before entering the holy place, it's made from the women's mirrors. So bronze mirrors in the ancient world were very intimate domestic objects, and they're very valuable, right? A woman used a mirror to dress her hair, to apply cosmetics, to prepare for her husband. And so these specific objects from these specific women became the bronze of the basin where Aaron and his sons washed before entering the presence of the Lord. And there's actually a beautiful midrash in the rabbinic tradition that when women brought their mirrors, Moses considered them inappropriate. But God actually ended up rebuking him, right? So these mirrors, God said, are dearer to me than anything else. And so the Israelite men in Egypt had come home from forced labor, too exhausted to think of family, right? But the women determined that Israel would not die out. They used those mirrors to draw their husbands back into hope. And that's how the whole next generation is born of that labor. So whatever you make of the Midrash as history, it reads the text with a really like theological instinct, which I think is wonderful. And so the domestic is not profane, right? The things of our day-to-day lives are not to be, cast aside. The Lord takes the most personal objects of the women's lives, and he makes them the first water a priest touches. So there's a whole article on this in the deep dive for yesterday, so check it out if you haven't and you want to learn more about this. Okay, let's do verses 9 through 11. And he made the court on the south side southward, the hangings of the court, were of fine twined linen and 100 cubits. Their pillars were 20, and their brazen sockets 20. The hooks of the pillars and their fillets were of silver. And for the north side of the hangings were 100 cubits, and their pillars were 20, and their sockets of brass 20, hooks and pillars, and their fillets of silver. All right. So this is the outer boundary of the sacred space. So before anyone gets near the tabernacle itself, they pass through this linen-walled courtyard. It's the first signal that you're leaving the ordinary life in the regular world, and you're stepping towards the presence of God. And fine twined linen, it was not cheap. It was bright, clean, almost glowing in the desert sun. And the courtyard is wrapped in purity. Even the fence preaches holiness. Now, the metal materials are also giving us some direction as well. You see, bronze was at the base, right? Strength, stability, judgment. And silver for the hooks and the bands. So value and refinement. Now, again, gold only appears on the inner sanctuary, but the closer we are now moving towards God's presence, the more precious the materials are becoming. So the courtyard is first in that sort of step to ascent. Now, for Latter-day Saints, this progression is going to seem really familiar, right? It mirrors the pattern of the degrees of glory and a movement from something good to something better to something glorified. From the outer courtyard, where everyone begins, through the holy place where covenant refines you, to the holy of holies, right? The space that radiates with the kind of glory only God can give. And the tabernacle is teaching doctrine directly. Like the pattern is the same. The closer you draw to God, the more radiant the world becomes. And the materials preach the journey, right? From strength to purity to glory. All right. Let's move on to the next section here. Let us go ahead and do verses 12 through 17. And for the west side were hangings of 50 cubits, their pillars 10, and their sockets 10. Their hooks of the pillars, and their fillets of silver. And for the east side, eastward 50 cubits. The hangings of the one side of the gate were 15 cubits, the pillars 3, and their sockets 3. And for the other side of the court gate, on this hand and that hand, were hangings of 15 cubits, their pillars 3, and their sockets 3. All the hangings of the court round about were fine twined linen, and the sockets of the pillars were of brass. The hooks of the pillars and their fillets silver, overlaying the chapters of silver, and the pillars of the court were filleted with silver. So now the verse, it's just walking us around the courtyard, right? It's east, west, north, south. And at first it just sounds like more measurements and more like materials that are exactly the same as the previous chapters. But what is really happening is that the text is letting you feel the whole entire closure, right? It's giving you a sense of being surrounded, enclosed in sacred space. So every side of the court is built in the same way. Linen hangings, bronze bases, silver hooks, and bands. It's symmetrical. It is ordered. It is intentional. And in the wilderness, well, that's chaos and unpredictability, right? And that is the story of the creation, right? God brings order to chaos. And here, God creates a space that's measured and ordered and stable. A place where everything is held in place. And this repetition, it matters too. So by describing each side, the text is drawing a boundary line all the way around the sanctuary. It's marking off a difference between the camp, ordinary life, the outside world, and the presence of God. So you're meant to feel the shift. You're meant to sense that once you cross that line, you are in a different world entirely. So even though these verses, they look simple, construction notes, right? They're actually doing something really important, and they're building a perimeter of holiness and glory, right? Now that frame, it holds the whole tabernacle story together, and we're just going to keep seeing it. Let's continue on 18 through 20. And the hanging for the gate of the court was needlework of blue and purple and scarlet and fine twined linen. And 20 cubits was the length, and the height and the breadth was 5 cubits, answerable to the hangings of the court. And their pillars were 4, and their sockets of brass 4, their hooks of silver, and the overlaying of their chapiters and their fillets of silver. And all the pins of the tabernacle and the court round about were of brass. So the rest of the court is plain white linen, but the gates burst with color, blue, purple, scarlet. It's the only entry point, and it's intentionally beautiful. So you don't stumble into God's presence. You're invited through a door woven with royal colors. So blue for heaven, purple for royalty, scarlet for sacrifice, and linen for purity. The gate is a woven sermon about the God who reigns, redeems, and restores. And as for the 4 pillars, 4 is the number of the earth. So 4 corners, 4 winds, the entrance to God's presence. It is upheld by the structure that symbolically embraces the whole world. So it's quite a hint that this sanctuary is ultimately for more than just Israel. And even the tent pegs, they matter too, right? That's why it's mentioned. All the pins were bronze. Again, nothing is random, nothing's filler. Even the hardware is part of the theology. Strength at the foundation, beauty at the entrance, glory at the center. All right, let's do a bigger section here, 21 through 31. This is the sum of the tabernacle, even of the tabernacle of testimony as it was counted, according to the commandment of Moses, for the service of the Levites by the hand of Ithamar, son to Aaron the priest. And Bezalel, the son of Uri, the son of Hur, of the tribe of Judah, made all the Lord commanded Moses. And with him was Ahalab, son of Ashmach, of the tribe of Dan, an engraver and a cunning workman, and the embroiderer in blue and in purple and in scarlet and in fine linen. All the gold that was occupied for the work and all the work of the holy place, even the gold of the offering, was 29 talents, and 730 shekels after the shekel of the sanctuary. And the silver of them that was numbered of the congregation was 100 talents and 1,760 shekels after the shekel of the sanctuary. And bekah for every man, that is half a shekel after the shekel of the sanctuary, for every one that went to be numbered, for 20 years old and upward, for 600,000, 300,000, and 3,550 men. And the 100 talents of silver were cast sockets of the sanctuary, and the sockets of the veil, and 100 sockets of 100 talents, a talent for a socket. And for the 1,775 shekels he made hooks for the pillars, and overlaid their chapiters, and filleted them. And the brass of the offering was 70 talents, and 2,400 shekels. And therewithin he made the sockets to the door, and the tabernacle of the congregation, and the brazen altar, and the brazen gate for it, and the vessel of the altar. And the sockets of the court round about, and the sockets of the court gate, and all the pins of the tabernacle, and all the pins of the court round about. So after the courtyard is finished, the text shifts to really it's an audit, right? So Bezalel, he works under the supervision of Ithamar, Aaron's son. And every talent of gold, every shekel of silver, every plate of bronze is accounted for. So this is the Bible's way of saying everything you've just heard was intentional. Every measurement, every material, every detail was done exactly as God commanded. No shortcuts, no trimmings. And the text wants you to know that consecrated work is also accountable work. And the free will offerings, they're tracked, they're recorded, and they're used as commandment. The gold, the silver, the bronze, not because God needs a receipt, but because Israel does. I mean, this is a public record of sacred generosity. A way of saying nothing was misused, nothing was hidden, and everything offered to God was used for God. Still see a little bit of this pattern today. At our general conferences, there's always what seems like some more, office work sections. There's actually a public, declaration of accounting that ends up happening, and it's for that same purpose. Every penny that is given to the Lord for his work is to be used for it and in proper accounting, and the people know it. So, and that's all our verses for today. So 2 chapters of furniture and structure, right? Lots of architecture. The ark with its cherubim, the table of shewbread, the menorah beaten as a flowering tree, the incense altar, the bronze altar, the laver for the women's mirrors, and the court itself with linen walls and bronze sockets, and a very careful and detailed audit of everything at the very end. So, but once you start looking, a lot of the parallels are going to stack up too. We didn't really talk about them too much, but we have kind of hinted at a lot of them. Right? There's gold throughout, a stylized tree of life inside the holy place, cherubim over the mercy seat, an east-facing entrance so the worshipers move westward into the presence, reversing the eastward expulsion from Adam. And there are concentric zones of holiness, mirroring the way Eden sat at the center of an ordered creation. Again, none of that's coincidence. It was the intention of the build, right? The tabernacle is the answer to Genesis chapter 3. After the fall and the expulsion, after the cherubim with the flaming sword, the Lord begins to build a way back to the garden, back to him, back to his presence. And it may not be the original garden. I mean, that way is closed. But it's a new sanctuary, a new garden, and it's in the midst of the chaos in the wilderness, on terms of a fallen people what they can receive, right? And every detail of the construction it's really built to tell that story. And the more time you spend with that and study it, the more you're going to see some just beautiful things about our relationship with the Father and the plan of salvation and his plan for us to return back to him. Now here's what I want you to take away from Exodus 37:38. The Lord's not done with his people. He is building. He's reaching back. And the chapters that look like inventory are actually important. They're hope and telling of how God brings us back to the garden, back to his presence where he walks with us side by side. And the same Lord who designed this tabernacle, he also designs your life. He notices the materials that you bring, and he pays attention to the labors of those whose names are not preserved. And he uses the most personal objects of your life, even objects you might be embarrassed by, and he turns them into a threshold that a priest stands at, ready to bless you and usher you into the presence of the Lord in greater glory. And that is such a wonderful thing. So tomorrow we're going to read Exodus 39:40. The priestly garments are completed. Moses inspects everything, and a cloud of glory descends so heavenly, so strong that Moses can't even enter it. He's been in the direct presence of the Lord's glory as well, so pretty amazing. If you want to go deeper today, the Substack article is The Garden Rebuilt, Tabernacle, Temple, and the Architecture of Return. So check it out. There's so much to learn about the garden and temples and tabernacles and the truths that it tells us about our descent to this mortal probation and our eventual return to the Father. You're going to enjoy it, so please take a moment to read it. Links are in the description, so go grab it. Snag it now. Tell me what you think. Love to see what your thoughts are in the comments, so by all means, share them with me and let me know what you got out of it. Was there any inspiration? Or heck, did I get something wrong? Anyway, that's all I have for you today. I'll see you all back here tomorrow for chapters 39 and 40, but until then, as always, I appreciate you all and thank you for choosing to spend some of your precious time to come listen with me.
Make me whole. Sacrifice says love pays what I owe. Smoke rises up and the mercies flow. Move me and dwell among your own. Pattern in the desert, Christ made known. Hands up, hearts clean. Let the glory roll. Move me. What's the promise?